Hey photographers, this is going to be a short one and it's for just you DSLR folks. So I want to talk about how I focus and recompose with DSLRs. If you haven't watched my back button autofocus video, go ahead and watch that first. That's going to tell you how to actually configure that. But I'm just going to consider you understand and know how to configure back button autofocusing. So one of the keys here is that you have to have some type of back button autofocus set up. You need to be able to lock your focus separate from actually pressing the shutter to take the photo. That's the key to being able to recompose. And this allows you to always stay in continuous autofocus. So for Nikon and Sony users, that is continuous or C autofocus. And for Canon shooters, it's servo. Okay, that's separate from the frame rate. That's separate from single shot, or continuous shooting. This is just the autofocus setting. So you always want to be in continuous. And that makes sense because most of the birds we are photographing, pretty much all of them, are always moving. Even if they're perched stationary, right? They're moving their head around, they're looking around unless they're like sleeping. For the most part, they're moving. And for a lot of us, if you're not like locked down on a tripod, which I'm never on a tripod, this is just to record these videos, you're handheld, right? So you're waving around a little bit, you're moving a little bit. So keeping the autofocus on continuous is the best way to do that. So let's take a look. Here's what we do. We're gonna press either our back button, if we're set up that way, or our shutter button to focus on the subject first. So once we've achieved focus on them, so we lock focus there, we then, if you're using traditional back button autofocus, you're gonna let off of your AF on button. But for me, I'm actually going to press and hold it. That's going to lock my focus there, okay? And then I'm free to recompose the image however I want, and then I take the shot, okay? So it is simply focus, lock focus, whether that's holding the button or letting off of it, and then compose however you want, and you take the shot, okay? That's how I composed. That's how I composed for years. Now, it sounds like a bunch of steps, but in practice, watch this, right? So I'm gonna focus on something else and then I'll come back to it. Focus on my bird, lock focus, recompose. Focus on him again, recompose that way. I'm gonna switch over to this bird over here, okay? Let's get him, focus, lighten the exposure, recompose, take the shot. Come back to this guy, focus on him, right there, lock, recompose, take the shot. Really fast and easy. I find that much faster and easier than if you were to try and sit here and use your joystick to move the focus box where you actually want to compose the image. Because inevitably, what often happens is the bird then turns its head the other way, and then you'd want to compose it this way, and then you'd have to move over here with the focus box, right? And then he turns back this way, and then you want to move over here to actually compose it that way. You just end up being all over the place. It doesn't work out. And you spend a lot of time just sort of chasing the bird with the focus box. Whereas focus recompose, once you have it, you're free to compose any way you want, basically, as long as that bird doesn't move forward or backward, which is a very important part, okay? If the bird is actively moving towards you or away from you, you then have to move that focus box, right? So let's hypothetically say this is a bird that is on a branch just slowly bouncing towards me and I want to compose it this way. I would then want to move that focus box over to there and then just keep tracking him as he came towards me and then take the shots as he was doing that, okay? So that is the difference. So one of the times when that happens a lot is shorebird photography. They're kind of running around the beach and I want to compose with more sky or more sand or something like that. So I'll just move my focus box generally where I want them and then track them that way. With mirrorless cameras, it all changes because we have subject and eye tracking, which means we don't really have to move the focus box around, and you've seen what that looks like since you're watching my videos. I pretty much shoot that all the time. So that is certainly a huge advantage, one of the many of a mirrorless system that does the bird and animal eye tracking. All right, so there you go. DSLR folks, you can still compose like crazy. Don't worry about it. You don't have to immediately jump to mirrorless if you're not ready to, or you just have some hangups about switching to that. I highly recommend you do at some point. I think they are the way to go, but if you're still on a DSLR system, I used one for almost 2 decades and had an amazing time with it and took plenty of great creative compositions.